wild story I'm covering out of Australia. Some of you might find this a little bit triggering, especially if you've been through a divorce. And it all starts with a beef Wellington. Erin Patterson is an Australian mother of two. She was at a family lunch where she served these individually portioned beef Wellingtons. Sitting at the table, Don and Gail Patterson, the elderly parents of her estranged husband Simon. The two of them are separated. Also there, Gail's sister Heather Wilkinson and her husband Ian, the local church pastor. Prosecutors say only Erin survived the lunch unscathed. Their meal contained a deadly ingredient, death cap mushrooms, among the world's most poisonous fungi. Experts say they've been found growing in the area around that Australian town. Eating those mushrooms killed Don, Gail, and Heather. Ian, the pastor, did survive, but only after weeks in the hospital. The key question now is whether Patterson deliberately added death cap mushrooms to the beef Wellington, or was it an accident? She has pleaded not guilty to all charges.
It has been 3 months since we first heard about this deadly mushroom mystery.
This case is captivating the world. Here's what we know so far about the mushrooms. Patterson says she used store-bought mushrooms, but then she added dried mushrooms from her cupboard for extra flavor. Those mushrooms, she admits, may have included some she picked herself as part of her foraging hobby. She acknowledges there were death caps in the dry mushroom mix, but says she never meant to pick those. Patterson ate the food herself. So how did she survive when the other lunch guests were killed? In court on Wednesday, Patterson said she had not eaten too much of the beef Wellington, as she was eating slowly. Patterson then said that while cleaning up from lunch, she binged on leftover dessert, eating almost an entire cake, and then forcing herself to throw it up, in line with her earlier experiences with the eating disorder bulimia. She says she did get sick and eventually went to the hospital. Ian Wilkinson testified that Patterson told guests she had cancer. In court on Thursday, she denied saying that, but she has admitted to earlier lying about having cancer in text messages. She now says the real issue was gastric band surgery, but claims she was too embarrassed to admit it at the time. A doctor has testified that she does not have cancer. Take a look at these texts between Erin and her ex Simon from the day before. Simon, I feel too uncomfortable about coming to the lunch with you, Mom, Dad, Ian, and Heather tomorrow, but I'm happy to talk about your health and the implications of that at another time. Erin, that's really disappointing. I've spent many hours this week preparing lunch for tomorrow, which has been exhausting in light of the issues I'm facing, and spent a small fortune on beef eye fillet to make beef Wellingtons because I wanted it to be a special meal. As I may not be able to host a lunch like this again for some time, it's important to me that you're all there tomorrow and that I have the conversations I need to have. The case is set to run through the month, when a jury will then decide whether Patterson accidentally added poison mushrooms to the meal or put them there on purpose.
Let's begin with the chilling scene. A quiet July afternoon in Leongatha, Victoria, where Erin Patterson invited her former in-laws for a homemade lunch. Becky, can you walk us through how a simple beef Wellington became a national tragedy?
Certainly, Stephen. Erin's choice of dish seemed classic, but the inclusion of mushrooms turned catastrophic. Within days, 3 guests were dead, and 1 survived after weeks in a coma. The link? The mushrooms, possibly death, kept served in the meal.
It's startling to think that one ingredient can unleash such devastation. What made these mushrooms so lethal, and could anyone have anticipated the outcome?
Death cap mushrooms, or Amanita phalloides, are infamous for their resemblance to edible varieties but contain potent toxins. Just a single cap can be fatal, and their symptoms often mimic common ailments initially, delaying life-saving treatment.
Let's dig deeper into the science. How do death cap mushrooms cause such rapid and irreversible organ failure?
They contain amatoxins, which target the liver and kidneys. These toxins disrupt vital cellular functions. According to a 2020 Australian study, the survival rate after ingestion drops dramatically without immediate intervention, as there's no established antidote.
Sounds almost like nature's perfect crime. Are there warning signs, or can even experienced foragers be fooled?
Absolutely, even experts can be deceived. Death caps closely resemble edible species, especially straw mushrooms used in Asian cuisine. Tragically, their taste and aroma don't betray their danger, which makes accidental poisoning all too common in Australia.
Turning to the legal arena, the charges against Erin Patterson are severe. 3 counts of murder, 1 of attempted murder. Becky, what's the mood inside the courtroom as these allegations are read?
The tension is palpable. Erin sits pale and reserved, while the prosecutor paints a picture of cold calculation, alleging she not only sourced the mushrooms intentionally, but also destroyed evidence and misled investigators.
That's a serious narrative. How does the defense counter this portrayal?
Her lawyer emphasizes the absence of a clear motive, arguing it's illogical for Erin to poison her own children's grandparents. He frames it as a tragic accident, not a calculated act, pointing to Erin's panic and inconsistent statements as signs of fear, not guilt.
Let's examine the evidence. The prosecution claims Erin destroyed a food dehydrator and reset her phone. What does this imply about her actions after the event?
To prosecutors, these are red flags attempts to erase incriminating traces. Forensic experts highlighted the missing dehydrator and wiped digital history as potential obstructions to justice. However, the defense insists these were impulsive acts rooted in trauma, not malice.
Do such actions typically sway juries toward guilt, or can they be interpreted as panic in the face of tragedy?
It's complex. Studies on wrongful convictions show that panic often leads to irrational decisions. Yet, in high-stakes trials, jurors may see concealment as consciousness of guilt, making context and explanation crucial.
Motive remains a puzzle. If Erin had no clear reason to harm her guests, what drives the prosecution's theory, and why does public opinion hunger for answers?
Humans are pattern seekers. We crave motives to make sense of tragedy. Speculations about family conflict or attempts at reconciliation abound, but legally, the absence of motive doesn't preclude guilt. It just complicates the narrative.
Could cognitive biases, like assuming guilt from tragic outcome, skew both public and jury perceptions?
Absolutely. The hindsight bias often leads observers to equate outcome with intent, overlooking the possibility of genuine mistakes, especially when the consequences are so severe.
Let's pivot to the culinary realm. How common are mushroom misidentifications, and what role might cultural misunderstandings play in such tragedies?
Globally, mushroom poisoning causes hundreds of deaths annually. In multicultural societies, unfamiliarity with local toxic species increases risk. For example, many Asian immigrants mistake death caps for edible straw mushroom, an error mirrored in Erin's case.
Are there effective public health measures in place to prevent such accidents in Australia?
While warnings exist, gaps remain. Mushroom foraging is unregulated, and educational campaigns often fail to reach vulnerable groups. After this incident, there's renewed debate about stricter controls and better outreach.
Let's not forget the fourth guest, Ian Wilkinson, who survived after weeks in a coma. What does his ordeal reveal about the medical and emotional toll of mushroom poisoning?
Ian's survival is medically remarkable. He underwent liver support treatments and intensive care. Survivors often face lifelong organ damage and psychological trauma. His testimony brought raw emotion to the courtroom, highlighting the human cost.
Do such stories influence legal outcomes, or do they simply underscore the tragedy?
They do both. Personal narratives can sway juries emotionally, but they also remind us of what's at stake: real lives, not just legal principles.
This case has become a media sensation. How has digital coverage from podcasts to TikTok shaped the public's view of Erin Patterson?
Social media amplifies every theory. Viral clips, memes, and online debates often oversimplify or sensationalize facts. According to a 2023 Pew survey, 62% of Australians heard about the case first on social platforms, shaping preconceptions before trial facts emerge.
Does this digital scrutiny risk undermining the fairness of the judicial process?
It's a real concern. Widespread speculation can taint jury pools and pressure legal actors. Judges sometimes instruct jurors to avoid media, but in our hyper-connected era, complete isolation is nearly impossible.
Let's clarify the legal challenge. What must the prosecution prove for a murder conviction, and how does that differ from an accidental death?
Murder requires proof of intent deliberate action to kill. Accidental death, even with negligence, falls under manslaughter. In ambiguous cases like this, the jury must weigh circumstantial evidence, motive, and credibility, often with no direct confession.
Without a smoking gun, how do legal systems guard against both wrongful conviction and letting the guilty walk free?
Safeguards include the presumption of innocence, high burden of proof, and careful jury instructions. Still, as legal scholars note, in emotionally charged cases, human error and bias can never be fully eliminated.
As the jury deliberates, what lessons should society take from the Patterson case about justice, food safety, and the hidden dangers in ordinary places?
This case is a stark reminder. Familiar settings can harbor lethal risks, and truth is rarely clear-cut. It calls for better education about food safety, more empathy for those caught in tragedy, and vigilance in distinguishing mistake from malice.
Ultimately, whether the verdict is guilty or not, how will this story resonate in Australian society and beyond?
It will echo as both a cautionary tale and a test of justice, showing that legal systems must balance facts with humanity, and that even the most innocent meal can have life-altering consequences.